podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We're hoping to bring you insight and analysis of the global film industry. I'm Wendy Mitchell. I'm a contributing editor at Screen International and Screen Daily. I am thrilled to be joined by not two, but three of my colleagues for this opening section. We have Screen's editor-in-chief Matt Mueller, deputy editor Louise Tutt, and senior international reporter Ben Dalton. Hi, gang.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So, we are talking in this episode about the recently wrapped London Film Festival, BFI London Film Festival, as it's meant to be known. Some reflections and takeaways and just what we encountered and if it was a great year or not. Maybe looking ahead a little bit, there's going to be some changes to the LFF for 2026, maybe mentioning those. And after all that, we're going to talk to Screen's senior international critic, Wendy Ide, and reviews editor Nikki Baughan about some of the sort of discoveries they found on the autumn festival circuit that deserve more attention, deserve maybe some more deals being done on them, just some interesting films you might have missed in the flurry of the autumn festivals. So, LFF, it was by all accounts a very, very busy one. Every screening I tried to look at was sold out. I think all the press and industry screenings were packed. There was a new ticketing system there. And really notable just how many stars were in town. Not just acting talent, I mean stars. We had the likes of, Clooney, Julia Roberts, Adam Sandler, Channing Tatum, Jennifer Lawrence. I could go on literally at that level for another few minutes. Louise, what was your impression of that sort of star power at LFF?
It got off to a really good start with Knives Out, and the opening night was buzzy, full of stars. The number of galas is up this year. Christie has pushed it up from 15 to 24 this year, and it really shows that the London Film Festival has become a really important stop-off on the awards season circuit. It's really important. All the talent is in. They're doing a lot of interviews, they're doing a lot of screenings, and it's the London Film Festival that's drawing it in.
Yeah, I would like to just say that of course it is the LFF that is the anchor to all this activity, but it has become a sort of industrial complex of film talent over some days of LFF. And that is not that, yes, they go do their big red carpet at the LFF. They have a great time, and stars do love coming to the LFF, and filmmakers. You get these huge audiences, really engaged. But then, something like Hamnet, for instance, has a great screening at the LFF, and they had Spielberg there, of course. But then they'll do probably 5 or 6, at least, private screenings to BAFTA and AMPAS voters. They will do junketing for that film's release here in the UK or for award season press. And I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me. I go, as a BAFTA voter, I go to some of this stuff. As a journalist, I'm going to some of those junkets. It's great. But it really has, in the past few years, just gotten exploded of what those people are expected to do, not just showing up at an LFF screening. And I think this is also why we see, the LFF, I don't know their budgets exactly, but they could probably afford to fly in 1 or 2 stars for each film. When you see 8 stars and, every hair and makeup designer on the stage from abroad, that is absolutely the studio behind that film, seeing it as the sort of European award season launchpad for that film. They are paying to bring all those people in. And also, what else has been added is things like there's an AMPAS reception in that first weekend of LFF. There's now a Golden Globes reception, I think the night after the AMPAS one. There's even stuff like the Frieze Art Fair, which has no connection really to LFF, but they want some of those stars coming there too. So it has just become a whirlwind of activity. I don't think any of this is necessarily bad. I feel a little bit sorry for the talent sometimes if they've got, 12 activities while they're in town, but they're making the most of their time in London. And you can really, we're seeing the press just loves, Julia Roberts is in town. Let's, run that on the front page. Isn't this great? So, but it's just to mention that when we talk about these LFF weeks, sometimes it's not even about the LFF specific activity.
I think what the LFF gives, though, is the red carpet pictures and the social media pictures. They're what is all over traditional print press, all over social media. It is the LFF that is anchoring all this. I don't feel too sorry for the talent.
I think it's also important to say that the LFF and the industry have leaned very hard into the festival as an award season launchpad, and this has been going on for years. I mean, this is a the red carpet gala aspect of LFF has been going for a very long time. I mean, Claire Stewart really sort of established that when she was director. Trisha Tuttle followed up when she was director, and I think Christy Matheson and the LFF are leaning into it. I think what's one thing to note is the fact that 2 years ago, when in Christy Matheson's first year as director, she had to deal with the Hollywood strike. So she must be thrilled that in her third year that basically this year has just absolutely trumped so many previous years in terms of the talent that was here. But I think it isn't, as you sort of say, it is very much viewed as the kind of launch pad for, European premieres, really kind of pushing films that are going to be in the awards season to BAFTA and AMPAS voters. And there's a good reason for that. I mean, obviously, BAFTA voters are predominantly based in the UK. However, AMPAS voters are also increasingly based in the UK. As they grow their international membership, I think I saw statistics saying that around 8% of AMPAS members now are now based in the UK. And if you count the European cohort, that brings it up to 15% of the total membership. So that's why LFF suddenly has an enhanced importance and why the industry leans so hard into it. I mean, you saw companies, Netflix has been embracing LFF for years. I mean, they had the opening film, they had 3 other galas, Mubi was a big player this year, with it, I think they had 5 films that were kind of
I saw Mubi 2 days ago. They had 12 films at the festival. I don't know how many were galas, but that is remarkable.
There were 5 because I
5
counted.
galas. Okay.
Because of course, one thing we were talking about before the festival was, would there be any kind of protest around, again, this song, we've talked about the movie sort of, investment from Sequoia in the past, and, would there be any, well, I mean, LFF got off very lightly. There was no protest this year that I know of. Ben, you were obviously out and about more than most of us, but I don't know if you saw anything, but I got the sense that basically things went off very smoothly this year and without any sort of major hitches.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the LFF will be very happy with how that all went down. There's a lot going on in the world that might attract different kinds of action, but I think on this occasion, 2025, the festival was about the films and about the talent who were there, and looking ahead to the months of award season that are coming. So, look, there'll still be more conversations about some of these political and social issues at other events going forwards, but this time it was about the films. And I think there's some relief probably from the industry on that front as well.
It's extraordinary how important the award season is. I mean, it really just every year intensifies and grows and grows. And it's just award season is so valuable to the industry at this time of, getting people to watch films. Any kind of awards heat behind a film, it still astounds me. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, one thing that was interesting was now LFF is even a platform for filmmakers in the race who don't even have films at LFF. So, I mean, I was interested to see that Wicked for Good doesn't even come out until the end of November, and yet there were 2 events for John Chu during the London Film Festival. I think the BFI hosted a lunch for him, and then there was another reception on the Sunday. So, but yeah, I think we also, looked at some of the kind of names that they had for Screen Talks. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis was on stage, Lynn Ramsey, Tessa Ross coming off her big BAFTA wins for Conclave. I mean, big industry names. And in the case of Daniel Day-Lewis, obviously not someone who's doing a lot of press coming out and doing he is doing a lot of promotion, it turns out, for the film, given it's directed by his son. But it's great to kind of get that level of talent kind of, engaging with the festival and engaging with audiences that are going to the festival. Yeah,
I would say for sure that, those 3 people you mentioned do not love being on stage particularly. Lynn Ramsey, that's not her favorite part of the job. Tessa really doesn't love to do a lot of industry panels and chats. So to get her doing this sort of 70, 80-minute talk is really impressive. And I think a lot of people will do that because it's the LFF and because it's aligned with the BFI. And, maybe it's also sort of, I'm wondering, if Spielberg is noticing, the BFI is the sort of safekeepers of film. in the UK. Of course I'm going to show up at the LFF. I don't know Spielberg's thought process, but or maybe he just wanted to come to a nice party. But I will say, and going back, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying that these people are only coming in town for an AMPAS party or a Frieze art fair hoo-ha. They're absolutely, you're right. The centerpiece activity is the LFF is the cornerstone of all of that. And I wanted to just mention that I talked to the team from Sentimental Value, the Joachim Trier film, and they premiered in Cannes. They have a great premiere in Cannes. They've been to other festivals, but they said they just were sort of blown away by being in the Royal Festival Hall with almost 2,000 people, I think, in there. They said it looked great, it sounded great. You could tell it had really touched them. Just that public audience festival moment at LFF, and that's at the key of LFF. And I don't want to imply that Christie's team is only programming BAFTA films or something like that. Because I went to a couple of public screenings of smaller films, by far not galas, and they were packed out. So I think tickets sell out for almost everything.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Louise, do we know why? I mean, obviously people like to buy film festival tickets, but there's a lot going on in London. We had sumo wrestlers at the weekend. Why? Is it BFI members buying tickets? Is Amex their lead sponsor? Are those people buying tickets?
Yeah, both good points. Definitely BFI members buy tickets really quickly. They support the festival. It's a really good addition to their membership. Same with Amex. It's a benefit that American Express gives its card holder members. And they do sell out quickly. Again, it's the star power that helps. There's a lot of most films have an introduction and some kind of Q&A. And I think audiences have got to know that. It's a good value night out in an expensive city. What is interesting is that this was last year that American Express is headline sponsor. It's been headline sponsor for the past 16 years. And next year, which is the 70th anniversary of the London Film Festival, they're looking for a new headline sponsor. So what will be interesting is if without Amex, it frees up some more tickets to be sold to the public, which I think is a nice problem for the LFF to have and will not be a bonus for them of not having Amex. So it's a question of watching this space to see what happens with the LFF budget for the 70th. Worth noting, the government has committed to support the festival through its screen growth package, I think, until 2029. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, through 2029, exactly. They gave them nearly £2 million this year. They supported them the last kind of couple of years once they lost the national lottery funding mechanism in 2022. But they've been very supportive of the festival, and committed for the next 4 years, which is fantastic. A great kind of nod of support from the government to kind of for the value of LFF in the city and for the country.
Yeah, well, I really am wishing Christy and her team are brilliant. I'm wishing that whole gang good luck finding a new headline sponsor. I mean, as we hear every day, sponsorship is tough, but also what we hear every day is brands are looking for new ways to connect with their customers. They see film as a very exciting way to do that. So Well,
I even wonder if American Express is looking at this year's event and going, "Oh, did we make the right decision?" Because the amount of press they got this year is really kind of through the roof. So they must. I mean, if it is their final year, they're obviously going out on a high. But
my goodness, yeah.
Be involved in a different way, and they could always be one of the
exactly,
sponsors.
Yeah. But definitely an opportunity there for a brand to come in and engage.
Yes. If only I knew any wealthy brands, I would help connect. But so from our take so far, a really good LFF, a really strong one of the strongest ever, we might say. Ben, I know you were on the ground. I'm too old to go to those late night parties, Ben, but you were not. And I know you were sort of hanging around the festival a bit more, maybe going to some films, some events, or even some side events. And I would just love to hear what your impressions were.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's one place to start, which is not with an evening event, but with a brunch. Now, this is the Netflix brunch that has become kind of a key event for the festival. It takes place on the Sunday, so sort of not quite the middle, but it feels like the middle of the festival. And this is at 180 Strand, so right in the centre of London. And this is an event I've been to for the last few years, but this year was more packed than ever. It felt like every member of talent had 2 publicists with them in addition. I saw one famous actor get into a lift with an entourage of 9. So, there were really lots and lots of folks there in the room. It was elbow to elbow. They had, so that Netflix have a big slate of films, and several that they'll be hoping will be in the famed awards race this year. So from Frankenstein, we had Guillermo del Toro, Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, Mia Goth, J. Kelly director Noah Baumbach was there. So you could go on, and the room was really packed. There were lots of conversations going on between these talent and then the BAFTA and AMPAS members and voters who we've mentioned, and a few press as well. So that was really, really happening. I was most excited to see someone who was going largely unnoticed, Bryce Dessner, who's composer for the film Train Dreams, but also guitarist for one of my favourite bands, The National. That kind of shows the breadth of talent that are in the room there. You've got A-listers, composers, and also they balance it quite well, Netflix. So they made sure folks who are not necessarily stars, you've got producers of lots of those films there as well. And also then of their animated slate. So it's a very busy, very happening event that really, brought a lot of people together on the Sunday.
I love that event, and I'm a little scared that it's getting more crowded, because it's already, you kind of got to fight to get your waffles made, But I had to skip it this year because I was at Chloe Zhao's Screen Talk. But that was magnificent as well. So,
choices.
Yeah, I know. What else was on your radar, Ben?
So it's interesting that so many of the international feature film contenders will play at LFF, including, we've talked about the festivals. Some of those may have premiered at Cannes or even earlier in the year, and they may be looking to keep any momentum going if they're looking to, really get into the award season. The international feature submissions have closed now, so we're approaching the 15 film long list, which will come out in December. And so, if you've got a film in that race, you'll want to sort of really keep the momentum going. We've mentioned Sentimental Value, Joachim Trier's film. So Mubi held a small drinks event for that, where Joachim was having good, deep discussions with several journalists and BAFTA members. He's done this circuit before with, The Worst Person in the World a couple of years ago. He seems quite comfortable with it, so I'm sure that Mubi will be keen to, get him speaking at things. So that was a nice sort of small cocktail. And then a really special one on the Thursday evening, second Thursday of the festival. There was a special screening and then dinner for Anne-Marie Jessia's Palestine 36. I was fortunate enough to go to. So this was hosted by co-producer and financier extraordinaire Hani Farsi, who's very involved in films from the Middle East. And this was a really lovely occasion. So a screening that is not part of the festival officially, like those we've discussed, but had several key players from the film there. We had Anne-Marie there to introduce the film, Philip Natchbull, who's head of Curzon, who are releasing the film in the UK and Ireland. And then everyone went on to this small-ish dinner. It was about 15 to 20 people, but with several of the key players there. They were really keen to speak about the film that they've made, which obviously has a political and social context. They were happy chatting about that and sharing their experiences making this film, Palestine 36. So the festival has clearly become a key point for talking about the films you have there and some of the issues around them.
I also heard you went somewhere quite fashionable. Is that right?
Absolutely. So in the middle of the festival, British Vogue and UTA, which is United Talent Agency, hosted a quite fancy soiree, as they termed it, at the Carbone restaurant in the very fancy the Chancery Rosewood Hotel, which was actually opening that night, I believe, officially. This is just off Grosvenor Square, so this is really sort of fancy level stuff. This is centre of London, Mayfair. And this was an event, a classic sort of mixer, but UTA had brought over a lot of their agents from the States, so there were quite a lot of American agents there, to hobnob with UK industry folk, including some of the awards voters and BAFTA and AMPAS members we mentioned. And it was a great evening. Cocktails, they served plates of their fancy tomato vodka pasta. which it turns out I was papped eating and featured in the British Vogue diary pages, tucking into a plate of tomato vodka pasta. And yeah, we had Benedict Cumberbatch, Tramell Tillman, who just won an Emmy for Severance, Ryan Seacrest was there, and industry folk Ollie Madden just started at Netflix as head of UK films. So yeah, definitely quite a glamorous one, and interesting that all those agents have come over for LFF.
I love it, Ben. I might have to go look into British Vogue to see Screen International's own having a plate of pasta. I mean, you've made it now. I also know that on the final day of LFF, I hosted 2 Q&As. I was tired. I did not make it to closing night. Also, it was really rainy, and the closing night party is kind of in a tunnel. I mean, they try to make the tunnel as nice as it can be. But Ben, you are braver than me. You went to the closing night of the screening and the party, and what was all of that like? What was the mood?
It was excellent. So yeah, the festival closed with Julia Jackman's 100 Nights of Hero, which has about as starry a cast as any independent film could hope to get. And several of those were there for the screening. So we had Emma Corrin, we had Micah Monroe, we had Amir Al-Masri, Richard E. Grant, Felicity Jones herself, all in this independent film and all there for the screening. And most of them then came along for the party in the tunnels in Leek Street near the BFI South Bank. And it was a fun evening. Yeah, they've had a party there before. This one was super busy as well, maybe slightly less packed than 2 years ago, but still, yeah, lots going on. And yeah, people seem to be having a good time. It's a great chance for also people who've been working throughout the festival, including the LFF staff themselves, who do a very good job to enjoy themselves, let off a bit of steam. And yeah, they were even joined by Willem Dafoe, who turned up, not in the film, but clearly wanted to get the last drops out of LFF as well. So I think everyone enjoyed themselves.
Yeah. Ben, you will know this too, but you know, as somebody who's been going to festivals for decades, the closing parties are always so much more fun than the opening parties, I have to say, because everybody's letting their guard down. You've got your diehards who've been at the festival all week. It's probably less sponsors. And, you know, some of those very fancy sponsors don't want to be in a tunnel at Leek Street. But that's my top tip. For every film festival, sometimes the opening parties can feel a bit stuffy or the suits are there. Closing parties, always fun. Everybody wants to have a dance, not least the festival team. So thank you, Ben, for telling us that. Sounds like you had a great one. And I'm going to come back to Louise now, because Louise, you also had a slight fashion-y moment with Chanel, I believe.
I did go to one really nice event during the festival, which again is a example of a big global brand that has become involved with the LFF, which was the prize-winning ceremony for the 4th BFI and Chanel Filmmaker Awards, which again, obviously the BFI is a connection, but not technically connected to the LFF. And that was a prize that the fashion brand gives £20,000 each to filmmakers who champion creative audacity. The winners this year were the Pillion director Harry Lighton, Stimming Pool creators who are Stephen Eastwood and the Neurocultures Collective, and Santosh director Sanjay Suri. And that's kind of a really nice event, and it pulled in lots of people from across the festival. I even saw Christy there and Olivia Howe, who's the festival producer. I mean, that shows how smoothly they had that festival running if they had time to come out for a lunch. And the great and the good, and myself and some other journalists were there. And it was really interesting. It really shows how big global brands and fashion brands want to be involved with the film industry and associated with that kind of talent. Tilda Swinton was on hand to hand out the prize with Edward Enninful, the journalist who, along with Ben Roberts, CEO of the BFI, are the jury who choose the winners. And that was a really nice event during the festival.
Yeah, that amount of money can really help someone's career. And these are not usually filmmakers who are, you know, opening this weekend box office with the biggest films. You know, these are maybe smaller films a little bit, or, you know, in the case of the Stimming Pool, that's a neurodivergent collective that came together to make their first film. Yeah, just really wonderful way for Chanel to identify some creatives they want to back. And that's a great thing.
The one thing I would say is that it was quite difficult to talk and eat because it was a lunch, but it was a stand-up affair with bowl food, and one of the bowls was heritage beetroot, which is very difficult to eat when you have.
I hope you weren't wearing a white shirt.
Well, I was, Matt. Hence
you were wearing your
feedback.
Your white Chanel gown,
My
Louise.
feedback to organisers. Very difficult. But actually, one person I had an interesting conversation with, harking back to our own Screen Summit a couple of weeks ago, if you'll indulge me, was Farhana Bula from Film 4, who said she has received many, many, many horror scripts since talking about wanting to receive more horror projects submitted to Film 4. And she would like to add that authored horror is the ideal project.
I love that we can correct that on the Screen podcast.
I know, this is what the podcast should be
there.
for. You know. So, everybody, I think we've had a really great recap. We haven't been that critical of LFF, I'm afraid, because it's been really good. Maybe in future years we'll have to slag them off a bit. But no, I think a lot of what we saw was quite impressive. And we've mentioned the sort of outliers around it that make it even more important to be in town and busy weeks. So we're now going to talk to Wendy Ide and Nikki Baughan about some of the gems they've uncovered at all the autumn festivals, including the LFF, because as we know, it's not just about the galas. And let's see if they found anything, maybe some of the smaller films that weren't getting the front page newspapers with Julia Roberts, but are really worth seeing. And we're going to go all the way back to films they started loving at Edinburgh, at Venice, at Toronto, and really hear a few films that I think the industry might want to take more note of, and also buyers. So thanks, Matt and Louise and Ben.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
So, autumn festival season has been very, very busy. We all know by now that everybody loves Hamnet, fair to say. But there are hundreds of films that have played at these consecutive festivals. And we wanted to pick out a few films under the radar a little bit from our critics who love them. And maybe these are ones buyers want to keep special track on. So I'm delighted to welcome Nikki Baughan, who is Screen's reviews editor, and Wendy Ide, who is Screen's senior international critic. Two very smart ladies, and I trust their opinions on films. Wendy Ide, let's come to you first. You already gave us a few tips after Venice. Films like Ross McElwey's remake, and what was the other one you loved in Venice? Late Fame.
Late Fame. Love Late Fame. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of fly the flag for those two again, but we've already talked about those, so we can move on to some others. So a couple from Venice which stood out to me, which I'm still thinking about, and I think that's the test, isn't it? If you're still thinking about something, a month on. First up, Divine Comedy by Ali Asghari. He's an Iranian filmmaker. He's probably best known for Terrestrial Verses, which was in Cannes. So Divine Comedy is this very kind of meta film satire. It's a film about filmmaking. It's a really smart, really kind of funny satire set in Tehran. And I think, what's really interesting to me is how Iranian cinema, for a while, people would sort of try and work within the restrictions of the regime. But now you're seeing filmmakers who are really taking quite bold risks. And this feels like quite a bold film. It shows me things I've never seen in Iranian cinema before. For example, a cocaine deal done by a drone delivery service, which certainly was quite unexpected. But I found the energy of it, it's kind of quite freewheeling, quite fun, quite sort of biting in its commentary about the way the regime tries to repress voices. And it's also got a really great dog in it, which I think is a very important thing. All films should have a good dog. And this
I agree with this. Yes.
I know,
yes,
this
yes.
is why I mentioned it. So this dog is actually, in the credits, is credited as Sheila, the lovely dog. And I have to say, it really is just the loveliest of dogs. And actually genuinely important in the film as well, because dogs are actually quite a key part of this story. So that, I think, is really quite special. It has a sort of almost I think I referenced Dear Diary by Nanni Moretti in the review, and there is this sort of motif of driving around Tehran on a moped, which feels in some way like it's in conversation with Dear Diary. Anyway, that one is worth a look, I think. The other one I'm going to pick out from the Venice programme is Hijra, which is a Saudi Arabian film by Shahad Amin. It won a prize in Venice. I think it won a NetPack prize. And it's interesting to me because we are seeing a lot more cinema coming out of Saudi Arabia. Some of it good, some of it, I think, perhaps not really destined to travel far from the region. This one, I think, is strong, partly because it really amplifies female voices. It's about a 12-year-old girl and her grandmother. It's a thriller. They are going on a pilgrimage. They're going to Mecca with the older sister of the child, who is 18. During the journey, the older sister vanishes. So it's a sort of mystery. We're trying to find out what is going on. Why has this girl vanished? So in a sort of state of urgency, the granddaughter and the grandmother travelling around Saudi Arabia. And what we see is a Saudi Arabia that we don't really see in other films, in that it is very culturally mixed. It's a film which touches on the kind of history of migration within the country and how people will come for pilgrimages and actually just stay in Saudi Arabia. So that's interesting. And the fact that it's a female-led story, I think, is also very strong. And it's about strength, female resilience. So that's very good. My final pick of my list is something I actually only saw very recently. It premiered in Toronto in the platform section. The film is World of Love by Yoon Ga-eun. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but let's hope so. So this film went on from Toronto. It's screened. It's already picked up a couple of other prizes, and it's now in main competition in London. A little word about the director. This is, I think, her third film. She was name-checked by Bong Joon-ho as one of the great masters of working with child actors. He put her up there with Kiarostami and Coriander, so he really rates her. And I do too, because it's a film which is really extraordinarily acted. It's about teenagers. It's about a really quite sort of unusual character in that she's very excitable. She loves drama. She's a teenager. She's very upbeat. She's full of energy. She's also the survivor of some quite horrendous abuse as a young child. So she is not a typical victim. And I think that's key. She doesn't want to be seen as a victim. So this film is really interesting in the way that it kind of layers and reveals what's the truth of this character. I think it's a really beautifully made film. It's stunningly acted. I mean, genuinely, really quite extraordinary. And I don't think the actress, her name is Soo Bin. I don't think she's done anything before, so she's a complete newcomer, and it's a remarkable performance. So that just really knocked my socks off when I saw it. So I would definitely suggest that people look at that.
Wonderful.
And those are my three.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That's a great trio of films. Because I haven't seen the films yet, I cannot confirm or deny if I also think they're brilliant. But what I can do is tell you who's selling them. Divine Comedy is being sold by Goodfellas. Hijra is being sold by the Iraqi Independent Film Company, and that's also now the Saudi submission for the foreign language Oscar. I think that's happened since Venice, so that's exciting. And The World of Love is sold by Berenson E&A. So people seek out those films. I really trust Wendy Ide watches a lot of movies, so if she's singling out these three, they're going to be special. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
And now we're going to come on to Nikki's picks. Nikki, you're not only a critic, you're also the reviews editor at Screen. So you're not only reviewing films yourself, you're reading all the other critics' reviews and editing them, and you really know what's popping this season. And I'm really curious to hear some of the gems that you're going to tell us about.
Well, this has been really hard just to pick a few, and you've already made me cut it down. So
I did.
You did. You're a cruel taskmaster, Wendy. But I've picked 5. So, and I could have picked a lot more. And I've realised actually that most of them are debut films. which I think is quite interesting.
That's very exciting. Yeah.
It is. And some really, really exciting stuff. I mean, it's been a massive festival summer, huge titles all across the board, but these really stood out for me amongst the big boys. So the first one is from a Canadian-Hungarian director called Sophie Romvari, and it's called Blue Heron, and it's her debut, and it's a lovely, interesting, intriguing, personal film about a Canadian-Hungarian family who settled on Vancouver Island in the 1990s. Is the first part, and it's very lyrical, very observational, and sort of reveals itself very slowly, and then suddenly it jumps forward and we see the young girl as a now adult filmmaker trying to make sense of the childhood that we have just witnessed. And so it's all about changing perspectives and memory, and it kind of blurs a line between past and present, and also between fact and fiction. There's a sort of a documentary aspect to the second half, which plays against the kind of gauzy kind of drama of the first half. And there's some real kind of bold creative moves in there, which for a first-time filmmaker, I mean, she's made some shorts which have made an impact, but it was just a lovely, intimate film that was really interesting to watch. So I would say that's a definite standout from the festivals. Another debut which really, really struck me was a very different thing. Rokia. It's an Algerian genre film from a filmmaker called Yanis Kusim. And it premiered in Venice Critics Week. I watched it and I was like, immediately I have to write about this film, because it really kind of struck me. It's set again in two timelines, 1990s Algeria, set against the backdrop of the Black Decade, the Civil War, and a man with amnesia who goes back to his family and everything feels weird. And his kids respond to him in a strange way. His wife doesn't quite know who he is, and he's trying to piece together who he was, and he doesn't quite like the answers that are coming back about who this man was. And then again, jumps forward to modern day Algeria, where we see a priest, specifically an exorcist, struggling with amnesia. And again, the filmmaker doesn't spoon feed us. He lets the story kind of breathe, which I think is really brave, particularly when you're a first-time filmmaker, to trust your audience, to trust that we're going to stick with it and know where it's going. I'm not going to ruin it, but it's a lovely kind of allegorical piece about evil and conflict, and it's political without being kind of soapboxy, and it's just a lovely piece of genre filmmaking with something really real to say from an exciting place in filmmaking right now. Thirdly, we're moving back to Switzerland, a film called Silent Rebellion, which premiered also in Venice in Spotlight, is moving on to AFI in Stockholm, so it's got a bit of wind behind it. This is from a director called Marie Elsa Squaldo, and I really hope I've pronounced her name correctly. Set in Switzerland, 1943, so right in the middle of the Second World War in a supposedly neutral country, and it follows a very mild 15-year-old girl who is raped and falls pregnant, and has to kind of navigate her own feelings about this, and also this really repressive, supposedly kind of neutral, but actually repressive, judgmental, patriarchal society. And it's so introspective and so quiet, but so powerful in that kind of quiet. And the performances are amazing. I'm going to try and pronounce the lead actress's name. It's Lila Gueno, I think is her name. She is...
I'm going to just jump in to say I met Lila in Venice because I also really agree. This is a very strong film. And I told her, in her performance, I thought it almost starts out, she almost looks younger than 15. Mm-hmm. She's really naive. It's almost like we're seeing like a 13, 14-year-old on screen. And by the end, it's like she's 28. And not looking old, but just the journey she's been on. And I agree with you. This is a very special performance by her.
Well, she finds her voice, but in a way that's not melodramatic or even celebratory, really. She just finds who she is, and she nobody rides in to save her. So we're going to come to the UK now for my last two. In fact, well,
yes.
So the fourth one is On the Sea, which is by Helen Walsh, who, disclaimer, she's one of my favourite authors. I think she's a fantastic author. She also made The Violators back in 2015. So this is her follow-up to that. This premiered in Edinburgh competition. And again, really low-key, intimate, powerful piece of filmmaking from a director who has got an incredibly clear vision and knows how to communicate that to both her audience, her actors, all of her creative team. So this is set in a North Wales fishing village, follows a lifelong mussel farmer, family man, living the life that his father lived and he expects his children to live. And suddenly a young deckhand comes to town looking for work, and the chemistry between the two of them is immediate. And it changes, it kind of turns this guy's world upside down. And it's two phenomenal performances from Barry Ward and Lorne McFadden as the two kind of men who become lovers in a place where you can't live this lifestyle, really, because it's not that it's, you know, taboo. It's not a taboo. It's a very traditional landscape. But what I really liked about this film is that Walsh doesn't treat her location or her characters like idiots, like bumpkins, like backwards people. It is what it is. And she really understands her location and her story. And it's a really lovely kind of coming together of performance and screenplay and craft in service of one vision. I think this is a superb piece of, you know, regional British filmmaking, of which I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in with you right there to say I was lucky to see this film around that Edinburgh time, and I was so rooting for it to win. I didn't see all the films in that competition in Edinburgh, but this is such a strong film. And I really want more people to be able to discover it. Barry Ward, why is he not a national treasure? I don't know yet. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on The Sea.
I mean, it's honest. I think it's an honest piece of queer filmmaking, and it's not big. It's not attempting to shout a message. It's just a story of two people who happen to fall in love. And I think it's lovely. I think it absolutely deserves to be seen, and I hope it is. And then finally, another UK film, which I actually just saw this week because it's playing in London. It's a film called Lady. And I'm actually quite surprised to be talking about this film because I looked at the premise and I thought I was expecting one thing, and I went in and it completely blew me away because it was something entirely different. And don't you love it when that happens? And this is a filmmaker called Samuel Abrahams. He has been BAFTA nominated for his short films. It premiered, as I say, in London. It is actually moving on to Tallinn, and it's a kind of mockumentary about a kind of eccentric aristocratic woman who is the subject of a fly-on-the-wall documentary. And it's essentially a two-hander between the woman, who is played phenomenally by Sian Clifford, who we know from Fleabag, and the filmmaker who is called Sam, played by Laurie Canaston. And they're really the only two people that we see on screen. There's a third character who sort of makes an appearance every so often. But the pair of them together, they are like the oddest odd couple, because she's like full on eccentric. It's the loud costumes, it's very Saltburny in its opening sequences. It is kind of the eat the rich satire that's becoming a bit familiar now, and you kind of think, oh, okay, I know where this is going. And then suddenly it goes somewhere completely different. And it's like a massive swerve, and it's a bold, I don't want to ruin it, but it's a bold swerve. It takes us a bit into kind of magical surrealism territory, and you go, what the heck is happening here? And as it goes on, as the screenplay kind of starts to peel off its layers, it becomes really kind of sensitive and insightful, and it's not about what you think it's about. And the two performances really carry it, but Sian Clifford is an absolute force of nature in this role. I mean, she gives it 100,000,000%. And I think it's not going to be for everyone. I think, you either go with it or you don't. But if you do, and I really encourage you to go with it, it's a real treat. And it looks gorgeous. The soundtrack, I've got to mention, by Johnny Woodley, is like a mix of sort of classical music and kind of human voices, and it's really intense, and everything's really intense, but actually underneath it all, it's a really emotional, involving story.
Yeah, when I hear the word satire, I'm thinking, oh, it's not going to get my heart. And it sounds like that somehow manages to do both. I'm really excited to see that one now.
It's really interesting. I recommend it.
Yeah. I'm just going to be my bore again and mention that Blue Heron is sold by More Than Films. Rokia is sold by Alpha Violet. Silent Rebellion sold by Salaud Morissette. On the Sea sold by Yellow Affair. And Lady is sold by Met Film Sales. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear about these films that not everybody has been able to discover, because even as you know, as critics, even if you're at these busy autumn festivals, you've got to cover this sort of, you know, Oscar bait titles and the big titles. And in certain sections, there are amazing films that just, they don't fall through the cracks. They've been programmed, they're getting reviewed, but we just want to help amplify those films. And you spoke beautifully about them. It's nice talking to critics. You speak with poetry. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning into the Screen Podcast. Please do rate us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to the whole Screen team for their contributions on camera and off, especially our podcast editor, Ellie Calnan, and web editor, Orlando Parfit. We do hope you'll join us again. Our next episode will drop on November 6th, and please join us again. Thanks.